Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is defaults. We establish certain patterns of behavior that become so deeply entrenched that they're kind of our go-to, regardless of circumstance. And sometimes we even create circumstances so that we can default back to those patterns. So even if they're miserable, even if the pattern is a pattern of misery. So we're going to have a look today at what it takes to transform these defaults, to create new defaults, and how it really does require a very conscious and deliberate choice. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to start the week with you. And everybody else who's joining us, welcome. And before we get started, let's just take a couple minutes to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop. And allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables us to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning. So defaults. This comes about as a result of a conversation with a client, and noticing how committed people can get to their suffering, and to their story. This is why I frequently say it's very important to consciously curate your story, to be alert and aware of the stories that you're telling yourself, because these stories that we're telling ourselves shape our experience, and in shaping our experience, they shape our physiology. Good morning, Dido. Welcome. So good to have you joining us this morning. So we're talking about defaults. And so these patterns, even when we're miserable, can actually offer some comfort due purely to their familiarity. So we've heard the phrase misery loves company, but also misery loves continuity. Misery loves consistency. And so we become patterned to these states of misery, and this person that I'm referring to has been telling herself this very, very sorrowful story for years. And it's not that certain elements of the story are not true. It's not this person. Welcome, Gia. So good to have you joining us. Great to be having you here for our conversation about defaults. And really what we're talking about is the misery defaults. I have a client who had this wonderful expression, my favorite miserable. And there's something to be said for this notion of comfort in misery. You know, it's familiar. It's familiar, we know it, and in a backwards way, even though we're creating intense suffering for ourselves, there's some weird comfort in it because it's familiar. And what can happen is that we end up creating identification with those stories and our favorite miserable, and then it's very threatening to move beyond it. It's very disruptive to step outside of those deeply entrenched ruts that we've cultivated over an extended period of time. And what happens is that we become identified with the story. And then the thing is that we've just used the story to justify our misery. And if we then are able to allow ourselves to move out and beyond the misery, in some way, our other than conscious is threatened, because it means, not always, but it's often threatened because it means that maybe our story wasn't true, and maybe all the suffering that we've done wasn't necessary. And so it comes down to, in many cases, people have to fight against the fact that for them it feels better to be right than to be happy. So I have these beliefs and I'm sticking to it, even though they make me utterly miserable. And even though they've made me utterly miserable, and the path to reconciliation or healing or happiness means recognizing that maybe I wasn't right. And that can be a crisis for someone too, is having to look at, turn the lens on themselves in a way that sort of shatters the illusions that we've created. And now we live in kind of a house of mirrors where things are, that it's all illusion in a way that we've created anyway. It's all so very much, our experience of reality is so very much based on our projections and our programming and the lenses through which we see and interpret or perceive and interpret the world. So Gia says, rightly said, some people choose to be right over being happy. I think, you know what, Gia? I think a lot of people choose to be right over being happy. I'm justified in being miserable. You know, this person wronged me. That I was exemplary in my behavior, and they have just abandoned and betrayed me. And here's the thing, there's probably another way to be looking at the story. And so the question is, what does it take? What does it take to have the willingness to step outside that story? It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage because it means going into the unknown in a certain way, because here's the story, and this is what I've known to be true. This is what I've believed to be true. This is what I've believed about myself. And now what happens if that starts getting untangled and I see that there's maybe a different truth to that? That can be pretty disruptive, right? So there is a comfort in the familiarity of misery, even that people experience. I think that I've experienced in my life. I've shared with you that so much of my life was spent in a deep, 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 dark depression. And so much of it was stories I told myself, about other people in my world, about my experience. And what it came down to in so many ways, where that misery originated in so many ways, was in my lack of accountability, my lack of taking responsibility for the quality of my life, for the stories that I was telling. I really did very much experience being a victim. And so many of us have had that experience and maybe are still having that experience. And when we perceive ourselves as victims, we're living in a world that is completely beyond our control, right? That is completely beyond, we're at the effect. We're at the effect of life when we come from a place of victimhood. And there are things that seemingly happen in life that we have nothing to do with, that things happen. What we do have the ability to curate is what we make those things mean, how we interpret those things, how we are accountable for the quality of our lives. And our experience of the quality of our lives is very much an outgrowth of the stories we tell. And so people that are new to this notion will say, I'm not telling a story, that's just the truth. And that's partly true. You know, the circumstances are the circumstances. Somebody said this, somebody did that. The part that we have some sovereignty around is how we integrate, interpret, understand those circumstances. And when our notion of ourselves is threatened or disrupted, when things with which we've identified ourselves are shaken, where our notion of how we believed reality to be is shaken, this is a very, very, very disruptive experience, even if it provides us a path to freedom. And greater joy, even. So maybe we get to look at what is freedom. And I think maybe the simplest answer to that I've been exploring, and I invite you to try it on and feel into it, that true freedom is being present in the moment. And we can recognize all the constraints that we have imposed, or, in the moment when we're really, truly present, maybe those filters fall away. At least that's my imagining. To be right here, right now. It's so simple, but not necessarily easy, because we're so patterned to be ruminating on the past or projecting into the future, and don't necessarily spend a lot of time right here, right now, and now, and now. And so in this moment, and we talked about this last week, in this moment, I'm okay. When I start thinking about this, that, or the other thing, and I start projecting those stories, and I tell myself, this is the story, and it's always going to be like this, and it's only getting worse. And you can see how it's very easy to talk ourselves into a state. And again, that repetitive programmed loop is the default. And it takes conscious and deliberate effort to start recreating or creating a new loop or a new pattern that kind of fills in the old. So I'm thinking of tracks down like a mudded road, right? These tracks become really deeply entrenched, and it's hard to steer out of them. But if we can start creating parallel tracks, or or tracks that crisscross, and what happens is that old pattern kind of gets filled in and redefined, and we have the ability to start creating new patterns. It takes a deliberate, conscious effort sometimes, and a persistent one. So Gia says, being mindful and learning to be present has helped me heal from my anxiety endlessly. I think being present is a cure in so many ways. I do too, Gia. Like magic. Being present, presence and curiosity are two magic elixirs as far as I can figure out. Being right here, like right here, right now, I'm okay. I'm okay. And bringing us back to this moment and realizing that we have this runaway mind that just wants to go off like a what is it called, Tasmanian devil, like from the cartoon, that wants to just whirl around and spin and wreak havoc of our lives. And I'm just thinking of how we really, I remember a time, and I've recounted this to you a number of times, when I just was so depressed. I was so depressed all the time. It was my default. It was something I knew it intimately. It was easy in its miserably painful, agonizing way. And I was in the shower and I was crying, and I just was determined to turn this around, and I started singing. And singing through the tears in the shower, to just move that needle just even a fractional amount, to be making that commitment to creating something new, to disrupting that pattern, to just break it. And it takes an act of will, and it may be that it also takes grace to have that will, to continue, to persist. To be active stewards of our own lives. And so there's the familiarity of the pattern, and then there's the inertia that we need to like cultivate some kind of momentum to overcome that inertia, to get out of that rut, to start making new trails. But the thing is that as we become more practiced, it becomes easier and easier and easier. The thing is, while I say it becomes easier, it's not necessarily smooth sailing, because there's a part of us that wants to jump in there and say, but the old pattern's really familiar and I know it and I'm comfortable with it, and I'm going to derail these efforts to create new pathways, because I don't want the disruption of being wrong. I don't want the disruption of being unsure of who I am now, because this was really familiar and now I'm supposed to be acting a different way and I don't know who I am and I don't know the path, and it's scary to be in the unknown. So sometimes we'd rather be miserable than scared, or facing the unknown. And so it really truly takes will and grace, which is pretty funny, right? Remember the TV show? But it takes both to come to a place where we can move ourselves into this greater expression of our truer essence. Like I can say that they say you have to spend 10,000 hours or something doing something to master it. I mastered suffering pretty well. I was really committed to it for years. I didn't know the way out. And the thing is, like, I really did not experience that I had a choice, because why would anybody choose to be that unhappy? Consciously, we probably wouldn't. But when we become more conscious, we get to consciously choose not to be that, not to, we choose to consciously recreate ourselves. We choose to consciously allow ourselves to be a process rather than something fixed. And that's part of it, is that we are ever evolving and changing. I heard a quote from Deepak Chopra the other day saying that human body is not a thing, it's a process. Life is not a thing, it's a process. So Rosalind says, asking the collective source, what do you want me to know right now? Perhaps asking that question will bring about an unconscious pattern. Perhaps it will. Perhaps in asking what is there for me to, I kind of think some questions that are even more directive than that can be very helpful. Like, what would it feel like to feel better right now? How would I breathe if I felt better right now? What would it feel like if I smiled right now? How might my breath change if I pulled my shoulders up and back? Gia says, I'm resonating with each and every single thing you're saying. You're just talking on behalf of me. Gia, that's so sweet. I'm really glad to know that this is hitting home. Really asking powerful questions and empowered questions. So if we're asking the collective source, what do you want me to know right now? In some respect, that's like being at the effect of. And I know, like, maybe asking for alignment with my highest sense of my highest self and being. You know, what would it be like? What would I do if I were aligned with my deepest purpose? What would I think? What would I be feeling if I knew that I was on the right path? How might that feel in my body? You know, to be asking questions that lead us into the experience that we desire. You know, like, not why am I in so much pain? Because our mind is going to give you all kinds of reasons why you're in pain. It's like, what can I do, or how can I be in this moment that would feel better? I can dance, you know, like, try like crazy things like singing in the shower, dancing, putting on great music, moving yourself around, standing differently, smiling, because all these things shift our being. What's an empowering story I can make up about this that I actually could believe? So these are things that we can do. And with that, I notice I've got to go. So that's it for this morning. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel and my Facebook page. Please like and follow my YouTube channel and Enlightened World Network's YouTube channel. The links are in the description. Please, please. And as always, it's such a, wow, I was going to say it's such a blessing. And Dido says, thank you, Mira. What a blessing you are. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel the same about you, and deep, deep gratitude. So until next time, so much love to you.